That in the case of BioShock Infinite, I would say there's not just like particularly one reveal that happens at the end of the game. You can't really summarize what the big reveal is at the end of the game.
Right.
But there's a lot of things going on at the end. Throughout the game, there's the running theme is find the girl, wipe away the debt, and they always throw that at you consistently through the game. And the way they present it to you, they give it to you and make you believe that you actually have to go find this girl to absolve a gambling debt that you've had that brings you actually to Columbia. You wiped away a debt by giving away your daughter, who is Elizabeth, and that's what ends up bringing you to Columbia to get back the daughter.
I was one of those people that was like, I wasn't like dumbfounded or like completely lost, but there was like the very last few words where, you know, he's like, oh shit, I am Comstock. I'm like, I didn't get that part. Like, I had to go online. I was like, explain the ending to me, because, you know, those are the key words, so you're like completely lost without those. You're like, okay, I saw all this Inception shit, now what am I doing here? You can take away the surface things, and still not really understand just how complex everything is once you like wrap it all together. I don't know. That part of the game just amazed me.
They're at the very end of the game, and I'm sure if you're listening to this, I certainly hope you've played through the game, because listening to us spoil it to you is a fucking pretty shit way to find out how the game ended. There's a part where you go back to the baptism that is referenced at the very beginning of the game, and Elizabeth has to drown you. And the reason being, and the reason why they are the same person, is because at this point at the baptism, Booker decides to accept the baptism and becomes Comstock DeWitt in the sense that he becomes a zealot and decides to work with the Lutesses to make this city in the sky.
Right.
And does he not decide that, he ceases to ever become Comstock and only becomes DeWitt, and then has a family, gets his gambling debt, and gives away his daughters.
I guess my initial reaction to the ending was that it fell a little short for me. I kind of had that like lost feeling. By lost, I mean like the TV show, where I felt like there were so many avenues that the game sends you on, with all the voxophones and being kind of an aficionado of American like visual culture, especially from that era. I feel like the environment is so rich and there are so many questions that get brought up, especially if you're paying attention, and they just didn't roll neatly into an ending for me. The plus side to that is I've heard a lot of like interesting theories because that ending is a little bit open-ended, so that's kind of what I've taken away from it.
I told you it would work.
See, all you know, it works. The question is,
Anna. So sorry, Anna.
do you suppose he branded himself as some sort of penance?
Sort of.
Don't see the point. What's done is done. What's done will be done. I suppose the brand is his hair shirt.
Instances where the Lutesses show you that they've been doing, like even at the very beginning when they have the like little sandwich board with the heads and tails.
Right.
Like it shows they've been doing that.
You've done this like 120 times or something like that before.
Right. Yeah. At first, like you see, and you're like, well, there has to like I wonder why they're taking a while. Is it just me, or are they doing like everyone who comes through the door? But it turns out this one instance has happened hundreds and hundreds of times, and it's always heads. And I think it's funny the way the two have like a rationale. Like one of them is very optimistic and hopeful. Mm-hmm. Like whereas you see a blank page, I see King Lear.
He's manufacturing new memories from his old ones.
Well, the brain adapts.
I should know. I lived it.
Of like this dichotomy between male and female, whereas the male mind is like the rational, like sort of constructed edge of the universe, whereas the female edge is kind of like there's like the left and the right dynamic, whereas like the female perspective is supposed to be like chaos and absurdity, but they kind of I feel like they reverse it.
Well, the guy is definitely the more optimistic of the two. Yeah,
which is what I think is interesting. Like they're playing with that idea, but they're kind of like flipping it because they're obviously supposed to like emulate that. I mean, that whole like idea of like a dichotomy, and that, you know, is very prevalent in ancient philosophy, and even some like, you know, modern.
The reason that the Comstock actually ends up trying to assassinate the Lutesses.
No, I actually didn't pick that up. No.
Yeah, it turns
I totally
out
missed that.
Yeah, it turns out that the reason why they're on this like crusade to get Comstock eradicated is because he tries to assassinate them once they don't like the direction the world's going. Mm-hmm. They end up getting assassinated but separated into all the multiple dimensions.
Wouldn't there be an argument made that they foresee him trying to assassinate them and then they enter a tear?
But I bet with all the voxophones and everything, it makes clear that the assassination happened.
But they are constantly telling you to question what you think is happening and what you think has happened.
Well, no, but they also say whatever lives, lives, whatever dies, dies. The more important question isn't what, it's when.
Yeah.
Like, these things all happen, but they're saying whatever happened, happened. Which kind of contradicts the ending.
Now we've upset him.
I don't expect this next bit will do much for his mood.
Are you ready to have your sins cleansed? Are you ready to be born again? Take my hand.
When they kill him while he's drowning because he's still Booker, but he's becoming Comstock, so you're killing two birds with one stone as he's being baptized.
Yeah, I understand that, but
yeah.
I mean...
What if he makes the decision in another
dimension. To not get drowned?
Right.
I mean,
just the same as what if you don't...
Well, exactly. It splits off into other ones, but the key part was that he, like, a dimension that was unopened before is now open, because they, did drown him and Comstock.
Not necessarily, because the Booker that you're playing, he made the decision not to be baptized. So there's obviously a dimension where there is no Comstock and where Booker continues his life as Booker.
One Booker getting drowned can affect all the different dimensions when there's probably other Bookers who said, no, I don't want to get drowned. No,
I'm the Booker that didn't want to get drowned.
But no, you do eventually get drowned at the end, and then all those other Elizabeths disappear. Yeah. As a chain reaction, but that's only one Booker. There's all these. What about all the Bookers that go to those Elizabeth's dimensions and don't drown?
Maybe that's not the point. Like, maybe that's not the point.
Maybe that's not the point. Maybe it's just a visual thing.
Maybe it's just to show you.
Maybe it's another thing where we're reading into it too much and trying to make more out of it than it really is.
Well, because maybe killing Comstock at the end isn't showing you what Elizabeth wanted to show you.
Right. Yeah, that's very possible.
Maybe the whole point of the ending isn't to kill Comstock. Maybe it's to show you, you, Booker, and you, the gamer, the significance of this world. Like, the significance of what the tears are and what the dimensions are and what a decision is.
Control, he's coming!
No, he isn't.
Where is he?
And a little bit later in the game, they actually show you a scene where you see what happens had Comstock never been basically what I'm getting at is even though Comstock dies when he's drowned by Booker in his little room on his airship, like, Comstock already knows that's going to happen.
Right.
As soon as you walk into that room right before it, there's a little mural on the wall that shows that scene that you are about to perform happen right before it happens. And you actually drown him, and he knows this is going to happen, but he also knows that Elizabeth is going to find out that this person Booker is actually her father, and she's going to continue to take the mantle of Comstock.
If purely the ending was that the Lutesses sent you to kill Comstock, one, I don't think that's the nature of the Lutesses. I think that there's so much evidence just from their personality and their voxophones and their own work that vengeance doesn't seem like a fruitful endeavor for them. And, like, they kind of all people would know that killing Comstock wouldn't solve anything. So I think Elizabeth sent you. In many ways, in so many folds. Comstock locked her up. Comstock essentially, like, tortured her and, like, did all these medical experiments on her. That makes sense to me. And I think that there's evidence throughout the game in a replay to kind of suggest that might be the case.
Okay.
So, Comstock became a zealot, and he did all these bad, like, horrible things to people, like minorities, children, and all this. And then there's also Booker, who because of the situation he put himself, gave up his daughter and imprisoned her in this world. If he wasn't in a situation where he would have given up his daughter, she would have never been in this situation, in this world, with this alter version of him.
I guess the gambling debt, I guess the idea of the gambling debt being something that's pushing forward your story, like that just seems so shallow to me. For such a well thought out game, the idea that you're just playing to erase a gambling debt, that seemed like a facade to me.
It kind of makes you think, well, you know, was this all created by, you know, the Lutesses to kind of manipulate Comstock or Booker into, I don't know, saving something like that.
But I mean, are you really saving Columbia, or are you stopping Columbia from existing?
We'll stop Columbia from existing.
Stop it from existing.
Yeah.
I think you find out pretty soon that there's not much you want to save about Columbia.
Right, yeah, there isn't.
Yeah, right.
There isn't much
After, like,
redeemable.
about 10 minutes, you're like, okay, maybe this place needs to fall
And
down.
we ain't letting no false shepherd into our flock. Show them what we got planned, boys!
Hello? Think?
I saw you die, Booker. Saw it with my own eyes.
That's right. Listen, I got you your guns. I'm here for my airship.
But my Booker DeWitt died for the Vox Populi. You either an imposter or a ghost. My Booker DeWitt was a hero to the cause, a story to tell your children. You just complicate the narrative.
I mean, they kind of make a very, like, morally gray political statement when they start off Daisy Fitzroy as being a very, like, powerful character with, like, a purpose, and then once you go to this altered dimension, she becomes kind of a watered down, like, villain, and you really don't understand. I think the more interesting thing, and I think you agree, is seeing that journey from that point, how she becomes this, like, social leader to become someone like that. It just doesn't make sense. It's like this, like, dissonance between, like, the two ideas.
Yeah, it's very loaded as a game player. And I know that I'm not the only one that has this opinion. I've done a little bit of reading. There are a couple other people who have a very strange relationship to this character. For me, she felt very much like an Angela Davis character, and the people who were writing this game obviously had a very strong connection to sort of like revolutionary history and sort of like, I guess civil rights history is kind of like bottling it and pigeonholing everything that's being covered, because there's a lot more than that. But you get this amazing woman of color character in a game. She really, like I said, embodies sort of like a Malcolm X, like Angela Davis character, and she has, it's the voice of the people, the Vox Populi, and then you get this dimension where you see what happens if she wins, or at least one of the possible outcomes if she kind of gets power. Yeah.
When I played it the original time, like the Comstock Colombian, like, government, they have all this propaganda that leads you to believe that these people are savages and they'll murder all your people. You meet them and they're nothing like that. But then when you go into the altered dimension, it feeds into, like, this, like, racist, like, stereotype that these people are savages. You have Fitzroy, like, sitting there murdering Fink, but then even worse off, she's about to murder a child.
Yeah.
She's smearing blood on her face, like, doing all, like, this, like, totally just, like, savage shit.
She almost doesn't know how to handle it properly.
I think the correlation and like how they're portraying her, it was very intentional.
Yeah.
And I mean, using kind of like the Vox Populi's, I guess their standards and their posters and their literature. When you go into the part where you see their printing press and you see some of the things that they're creating, like, that was a very powerful moment for me, just knowing like the history of like the People's Graphic Workshop and how like art and I guess graphics have played such a huge role in civil rights and like women's suffrage, which they're obviously referencing. It's just like, as a female gamer, I mean, you get a couple women, one of them's like extremely irrational, the other one becomes a savage,
Yeah.
and then the one redeeming woman you get, I mean, you fucked up her entire life. So it's kind of like, okay.
Why don't people in Colombia use Vigors?
I don't know.
There's stores everywhere on the street. Like, I think I know the answer. It's just a simple gameplay answer. But, like, you had, like, in BioShock, the original BioShock with the objectivism, it made perfect sense. There were these Vigors inside the world, and everyone wanted to exceed past human potential and started taking the Vigors, and it drove the city nuts. And you had all these, like, people who were, like, basically, like, fucking superpowered drug addicts. And then you go to Colombia, and the whole place is, everyone's talking about Vigors, like, oh, have you tried the new Vigors? No, I haven't tried them. I'm gonna wait for the Fink to make one. Saying they're using, but no one's, it's just something that we just have to accept as a loophole.
Well, let's consider, like, the religious climate. I mean, everyone's kind of supposed to be a sheep, and the prophet is supposed to be the shepherd. So you're not really encouraged to outdo your means.
But, well, then even more towards the thing that I think it's just a gameplay thing that got put in the game, and they don't have a rational narrative reason for them being there.
I don't think there's a good answer for that. I think it might be in something that got overlooked.
Oh, here's this, Vigor system, and I'm just like, okay.
Alright, now the last mission of the game. The very last mission of the game seems so out of place, and like there's so many gameplay elements that happen within there, and I don't understand like everything just got rushed into this last like moment where you try to defend this battery. You have Songbird at your side, you're sending him into buildings which doesn't work, or ships and stuff, it doesn't work very well. You're sitting there like pushing the button like, please destroy this thing, please, like I'm in a hurry. And then it turns out at the very end of it, you just send Songbird to destroy the building. And our kind of thought is, why can't you just send him to destroy the building in the first place? Why do I have to fly all the way over there to just see you do it?
Yeah, that last mission is like banal to the extreme.
Yeah.
Like, it lasted way too long, which is kind of the overall critique of the combat in general, but that like last mission just drove it home. And then you just like have this infuriating time defending this battery, and everything's like chaotic, and I just feel like it wasn't very cohesive. You didn't really know what to do. And then the controls were shitty in that part, because it's like you said, you're in a hurry, and Songbird takes forever.
It kind of benefits the end in a way where you don't think it's a boss fight or anything like that, and it just seems like, a gameplay moment, and then all of a sudden you're thrust into the ending, and it doesn't like mean the ending is abrupt. It just it was nice knowing that it wasn't a boss fight.
In reality, what they gave you is this fucking like annoyingly frustrating like run between these two spots on my ship.
Yeah.
And you don't ever use the battery.
Yeah, and you never use the battery.
Like, if you use the battery, and I felt like, oh great, like I did it. But you don't use the fucking battery.
Because I noticed everybody was going one way, but I didn't know what they were going at. And so, I mean, that part was very frustrating.
Yeah.
Like, it with the game being as well thought out as it is, I would have been fine with it if it was just, just kind of a regular level or something like that. But it seems like there was a lot of emphasis on this part, and it didn't have any sort of purpose.
How do you guys feel about the violence though? I feel like that's being talked about a lot. Did that take you out of the game?
I would say, yeah, I think there was a ridiculous amount of, there was like some of the violence is pretty graphic. It was a little off-putting, but it never really took me out of it.
Well, from hearing other people's opinions, I think because it was so cinematic and just like a striking game, they kind of wanted it to be that game that you could show to everyone.
And they made people, they were like,
really
maybe
wasn't.
not. Yeah.
It had so much nuance. Like, I don't think that is a game that I could give to anyone and like just let them play and be like, here, be a gamer. And obviously being like, from the standpoint that I come from, I of all people would have an objection to violence.
like as soon as that happened and it started getting really violent, like as soon as I started puts the hook inside the guy's head, like it shot. I was like, oh, this is kind of violent, and it kept in the corner of my mind, like, oh, she's watching. This is what she's seeing, watching, and it's not something that I think a lot of people who play video games realize until they have someone else watching them play a video game. And if I was playing by myself, I wouldn't notice. But since you were there watching me, it becomes more apparent that violence is there.
You want to prove to people, like, hey, this is a legit medium and stuff, and, you know, you can tell really complex, especially this game, you can tell a very complex, deep, thought-provoking story in a video game, and you show people this, and they're like, well, it looks like every other video game that I see as far as the violence is concerned. So I think, yes, from a non-gamer perspective, yes, it is overly violent, but being a gamer and being kind of almost overexposed to, you know, that being the standard of shooters, I didn't feel like it took away from my experience personally.
Right.
Like, this is one of the rare mediums. I mean, not that it doesn't exist in other mediums, but to like be able to appreciate the level of detail, the nuances that go into it, you have to be participating in the medium to appreciate. If like, for example, if I were to put BioShock Infinite in front of someone and the fucking Walking Dead survival instincts, if you didn't play games, you probably couldn't tell what the difference is. For people who play games, that's fucking night and day.
Right.
It's a totally different experience.
I have a problem with if you're going to introduce subject matter, follow through a little bit more, which, like I've already kind of touched on. There's a lot of alliteration. There's a lot of incorporating of like movements and moments in history and literature, which I think is amazing because it proves that the gaming industry is a lot more than people give it credit for, and this game really testifies to the minds that are in this industry.
See? Not stars. They're doors.
Doors to
everywhere. All that's left is the choosing.
They weren't showing you a scene. You were actually playing through and experiencing an ending that maybe didn't explain everything, but made an attempt.
But it got you thinking.
Yeah, it got you thinking.
And it made you want to go back and replay.
Yeah, and that's very few games can actually do that. Actually get you to want to replay a game, not to experience a gameplay, but to have a better understanding of the story.
It is a commercially successful game, and I feel like it's for the right reasons, but I feel like there's still too much of a idea of, like, you know, Call of Duty still sells very well, so they kind of might see it as like, well, we don't need to necessarily do that to be successful. Like, they were very ambitious in their ideas and their storytelling, and, you know, that's a lot of work. It was the game took 5 years to make, and, you know, some of the big name developers, they do take the 5 years or whatever, but it's still not going to be some sort of commonplace where, you know,
chances are if you're spending 5 years on a game, you're probably spending it on a game that's kind of maybe a more surefire formula than something like BioShock Infinite.
Yeah, like, I think this is kind of this was kind of said about I almost called it Atlas Shrugged, BioShock 1. It's kind of a once in a lifetime sort of game that, you know, it doesn't come along very often, and unfortunately I still see this being the case with Infinite. It's a wonderful experience. It's a great showcase for storytelling in the gaming medium, and but I don't think it's necessarily going to change any, like, the game industry, like, as a whole. But
yeah, I mean, with everything else we've said, like, I think this is definitely one of the most effective endings that I've ever seen.
Definitely.
Another thing that Elizabeth, probably one of the coolest parts for me especially, is where Elizabeth takes you to an alternate dimension, which brings you into Rapture, like 1960s era Rapture.
Right. That was freaking amazing. I love that.
Like, I had no idea that was coming, like, and I was totally shocked. Like, it just makes you, it kind of like, it does something for it. It makes you realize how much like these like video game, like these faux created worlds, like actually leave an impression on you when you just like the idea of like being there just for like 2 minutes and seeing it re-envisioned and like a higher definition is just like it does something for you. You get excited like being there.
Five.